Your brain is lying to you. Every time you scroll, a silent, fatal calibration error is destroying your self-worth from the inside out. I've decoded the one measurement mistake we all make. Stay until the very end, because your internal freedom depends on seeing this truth. Have you ever felt your heart stop for a fraction of a second while doing something as mundane as scrolling through your phone? Not because of a medical emergency, but because of a silent, invisible alarm going off deep inside your chest. It is a sudden, cold realization that hits you like a system-wide failure. You are sitting in the dark, the blue light of the screen reflecting in your eyes, and as you watch someone else's life unfold in high definition, a terrifying thought takes hold of you. I am fundamentally behind. I have failed at a race I didn't even know I was running. This is the moment where your internal world begins to fracture, and the blueprint you've worked so hard to build suddenly looks like a pile of scrap. Welcome to Glaze English, a quiet space where we dissect these loud thoughts together. Before we dive into the mystery of why our minds betray us this way, if you find value in these deep reflections, please take a moment to subscribe and join our community. Your support is the energy that keeps this journey going. As someone who has always looked at the world through the lens of data, logic, and structural integrity, I've spent years trying to figure out why this specific pain is so universal yet so isolating. It is a calibration error. We are highly complex, custom-built organisms, yet we are trying to measure our progress using a mass-produced industrial ruler. We look at a stranger's wedding, another person's new house, or a video of someone posting daily from a beach we've never even seen, and we immediately input that data into our own lives as a standard. But in doing so, we commit a grave analytical mistake. We compare our messy, internal, raw footage to their polished, final edit. Take a breath with me. Just one quiet, deliberate breath, in and out. You made it to this moment, and that alone is a successful operation. Why does that small voice whisper, "Why am I not there yet?" Why does your pride vanish the moment you see someone else's highlight? We are going to re-engineer this feeling. We are going to look at the structural stresses of your soul and realize that perhaps your pace is slower because your roots are being built for something much larger and deeper than the surface can currently show. The race is a lie. The timeline is a ghost. And the error isn't in your life. It is in the tool you are using to measure it. Stay with me until the very end, because we are about to recalibrate everything you thought you knew about being enough. To understand the error in our measurement, we have to look at the quality of the data we are feeding into our minds every single day. As someone who has spent a lifetime valuing precision, I have realized that the greatest deception of the modern age is that we are making life-altering decisions based on an incredibly low-fidelity dataset. When you see a 10-second clip of a colleague's promotion or a single photograph of a friend's perfect kitchen, your brain processes that information as a complete truth, a finished blueprint of what a successful life should look like. But in any technical field, we know that if the input data is incomplete, the resulting analysis is fundamentally worthless. We are currently living in a global showroom culture. Imagine walking into a high-end car dealership. The floors are polished to a mirror shine, the lighting is perfect, and every vehicle looks like a masterpiece of engineering. What you don't see is the factory floor 100 miles away. The grease, the failed prototypes, the scrap metal, and the workers exhausted from 10-hour shifts. Social media has turned everyone's life into a showroom, but we are all still living in our own factories. We see our own scrap heaps, our failed attempts, our 2 a.m. anxieties, and our messy, unedited drafts, and we compare them to someone else's polished final product. It is a logical fallacy that is tearing our peace of mind apart. I've been there too, staring at my own life's blueprints and feeling a profound sense of shame because the reality in front of me didn't match the clean lines of the design. I used to think that because my journey was taking longer and looked a lot messier, I must have made a catastrophic error in calculation somewhere back in my 20s. But what I was failing to account for was the hidden variables. We never see the cost behind the confident face. We never see the years of silent struggle, the crushing self-doubt, or the sacrifices made in the dark that allowed for that one bright moment in the sun. Our brains are hardwired for efficiency, so they take shortcuts. They see a win and assume a winning life. But a single data point is not a trend. A highlight reel is not a reality. When you look at someone else's external final cut, you are seeing a version of their story that has been edited, filtered, and curated to remove the noise. Your life, however, is lived in the raw footage. It is loud, it is grainy, and it is full of scenes that will never make it to the screen. But that raw footage is where the actual growth happens. It is where the structural integrity of your character is tested and forged. By comparing our raw reality to their edited illusion, we are not just being unfair to ourselves, we are participating in a system of mass-produced inadequacy. We need to stop trusting the deceptive data of the screen and start valuing the complex, unedited truth of the human experience. But beyond the deceptive data on the surface lies a deeper question of internal stability, what I like to call the structural integrity of a human life. In my professional world, I've learned that a structure can look immaculate from the outside, not a single crack in the concrete, not a speck of rust on the steel, while internally it is screaming under a load it was never designed to carry. We do this to ourselves all the time. We build these towering facades of achievement and polished lifestyles, convincing the world of our stability, while our internal architecture is quietly collapsing under the weight of simply maintaining the image. We forget that in the world of engineering, as in life, the most beautiful exterior means nothing if the foundation is compromised by the very pressure of its own display. I remember a specific afternoon that fundamentally shifted how I view the success of others. I was sitting across from a close friend in a cafe that looked like it had been designed specifically for a magazine shoot. She was, by every societal metric, winning. She had the apartment with the floor-to-ceiling windows, a salary that placed her in the top percentile, and a social calendar that never seemed to have a gap. I spent most of that lunch feeling that familiar, sharp pang of inadequacy, calculating the distance between her high-velocity trajectory and my own perceived stagnation. But when the waiter cleared the table and the ambient noise of the room faded, she looked at me with eyes that were suddenly terrifyingly hollow. Her voice shook as she confessed that she cried almost every night. that the pressure to stay at the top felt like a noose, and that she posted those radiant, smiling photos because it was the only way she could trick herself into feeling she was still in control. It was a structural failure hidden behind a beautiful, expensive finish. It made me realize that high output often masks immense internal fatigue. We envy the confident face without calculating the psychological cost of the maintenance. In engineering, if you push a material beyond its elastic limit, it doesn't just bend, it eventually snaps. Many of the lives we compare ourselves to are running at a permanent 110% capacity, operating in a danger zone of burnout and isolation just to keep the lights on. Is it really success if the cost is your peace? Is a life superior if it requires you to sacrifice your soul to sustain the appearance of it? We often mistake a person's ability to endure high pressure for a sign that they are flourishing. But endurance is not the same thing as health. A few weeks after that lunch, I found myself walking past a small, untended garden of wildflowers. They weren't planted in neat geometric rows. They were tangled, some leaning too far to one side, some just beginning to bud, while others were already losing their petals. No one was clapping for them. No one was grading their performance or comparing the height of the daisies to the spread of the clover. They were just being alive. There was a profound structural honesty in those flowers that my friend's dream life lacked. They didn't have to prove their worth to the soil or the sun. They just grew because that is what they were designed to do. They were enough simply by existing in their own season. This realization brought me back to the idea of the pressure vessel. We are not industrial machines meant to produce at a constant, ever-increasing rate. We are organic systems. We need seasons of dormancy. We need to allow for messy drafts, and we need to understand that perfection is often just a very effective mask for a lack of internal freedom. If you find yourself looking at someone else and thinking, they have it all together, remember that you are only seeing the external shell. You aren't seeing the internal braces holding them up, or the cracks they are desperately trying to patch. Real integrity, the kind that allows you to stand firm when the world gets loud, doesn't come from looking perfect. It comes from being real, even when real looks slow, quiet, or incomplete. You are building a life, not a showroom, and a sturdy life requires a foundation built on truth, not on the exhausting performance of keeping up. If we accept that the external facade is often a fragile shell, then we must turn our attention to the actual engineering of our own lives. The part that happens beneath the surface, where no one else can see. As someone who has spent years studying the physics of growth and the chemistry of change, I've realized that we often mistake latency for failure. In a world obsessed with instant output, we view a slow period as a malfunction. But in nature and in engineering, the most resilient systems are those that prioritize the foundation over the finish. What if your pace is slower right now, not because you are falling behind, but because your roots are growing deeper? If you intend to build a skyscraper of a life, you cannot simply pour a shallow slab of concrete and call it a day. You have to dig deep into the dark, cold earth, move the heavy stones, and reinforce the base long before the first floor ever sees the light of day. I remember my own late 20s vividly. a time when my analytical mind felt like it was constantly reporting a system error. I had the degrees, the technical background, and the potential. Yet, while everyone around me seemed to be speeding down a 10-lane highway, getting the promotions, signing the mortgages, announcing the marriages, I felt like I was standing still in a quiet, overgrown forest trail. I wasn't lost, but because I wasn't on the highway, I felt like a failure. I was measuring my progress with a ruler that didn't belong to me. I was looking at their high-velocity travel and assuming that because I was moving at a walking pace, I was somehow broken. But what I didn't realize then was that the highway is only efficient if you want to go where everyone else is going. The highway is loud, congested, and it offers no room for the soul to breathe or for original thoughts to take shape. It takes a specific, quiet kind of bravery to stay on the forest trail when you can hear the roar of the traffic just a few miles away. It is an act of courage to not check the boxes that society hands you, to say, I am not ready to bloom yet because I am still building the root system that will sustain me for the next 50 years. In engineering, we talk about alignment. If a rotating shaft is misaligned by even a fraction of a millimeter, the resulting vibration will eventually tear the entire machine to pieces. Human lives work the same way. When you try to match someone else's pace, you are forcing yourself into a state of misalignment. You are vibrating with an anxiety that isn't yours, chasing a timeline that was never designed for your specific operational parameters. We have been conditioned to believe that efficiency is the highest virtue, that getting from point A to point B as fast as possible is the only way to win. But efficiency is a metric for machines, not for humans. For us, the higher virtue is alignment. It is the deep, steady peace that comes when your actions match your values and your pace matches your energy. I've learned that a life lived in alignment, even if it looks slow, even if it looks unconventional, operates with a much higher level of internal harmony than a life lived in constant, efficient competition. When you finally stop trying to catch up to the world, something miraculous happens. You start to hear your own voice again. You begin to notice the quiet beauty of your own unique timeline. You realize that your small routines, your personal interests, and your natural rhythms are not glitches in the system. They are the system itself. There is a profound sense of relief in admitting that you are okay with not being ahead, because the concept of ahead implies we are all going to the same place. We aren't. We are all walking entirely different routes toward entirely different destinations. Your life doesn't need a faster engine. It needs a more honest connection to the person steering it. When you walk beside yourself, rather than running after someone else, the path finally starts to feel real. It might not be flashy, and it might not impress the people on the highway, but it will be yours. And that, in the end, is the only metric that truly matters. Once you begin walking beside yourself, you realize that the most important part of any complex build isn't the grand unveiling, but the final, quiet assembly of the small things that actually make the system work. We get so caught up in the destination, the milestone, the promotion, the public victory, that we forget to notice the environment we are currently inhabiting. What is here, right now, is a life that no one else in the entire world gets to live. Not the big moments necessarily, but the sacred, ordinary ones. The way the sunlight hits your favorite window at exactly 7 a.m. The unique frequency of a friend's laugh. The quiet, solitary pride you feel after finishing a difficult task that you almost gave up on. These aren't components that show up on a comparison chart or a social media feed, yet they are the very things that shape the structural integrity of your heart. As a person who used to believe that meaning only existed in the milestones, I have had to unlearn the idea that stillness is stagnation. Life is not a series of high-output events. It is mostly made of small, gentle, unrecorded things. I remember a day not long ago when I felt deeply discouraged. A project I had poured my technical soul into had failed to meet the metrics I had set. My analytical mind was screaming that I was inefficient, that I wasn't smart enough or fast enough. Later that afternoon, I went for a walk near my house and passed a patch of wildflowers. They weren't growing in neat rows. They were tangled and strange, some blooming with intensity, while others were already returning to the earth. Not one of them was looking at the flower next to it. They were simply being alive enough. In that moment, I felt a system reset. I realized I don't have to turn every part of my life into proof of my value. I am allowed to exist gently. This realization leads to what I call quiet confidence. Real confidence isn't a loud, certain broadcast. It is a soft, unshakable strength that says, I don't need to prove myself anymore. It is the peace that comes when you finally stop needing external validation to feel stable. It feels like standing barefoot on the solid ground after a long, exhausting run. It's a groundedness that isn't based on being better than someone else, but on being fully aligned with yourself. When you carry that peace, you stop competing. You stop rushing. You start being truly present in your own life, rather than being a spectator in someone else's. So, as we pause here in this quiet space we've built together, I want to invite you into this global assembly. Wherever you are in your journey, whether you feel you are in a season of blooming or a season of deep, quiet roots, know that you are part of something larger. I'd love for you to take a moment right now to leave a comment with your city and the current time. It's a small way for us to see the beautiful, different timelines we are all living on, all at once. It's a reminder that while our clocks are set differently, we are all here, in this moment, together. Thank you for trusting me with your time today. If this reflection helped you breathe a little easier or remember a truth you had forgotten, please share it with someone who might be struggling with their own calibration. And as you move back into the noise of the world, return to your quiet confidence. Be kind to your own pace. Be proud of the invisible growth that only you can see. Carry with you the knowledge that you are not failing, you are not late, and you are certainly not behind. You are simply, beautifully becoming. As we reach the conclusion of this exploration, I want to leave you with a final synthesis of everything we've analyzed together. We have spent this time deconstructing the calibration error that happens when we measure our organic, complex lives against the low-fidelity, curated data sets of the digital world. We've looked at the structural integrity of our souls, realizing that a life that looks perfect on the outside is often under immense internal stress, while a life that looks slow and quiet might be building a foundation capable of lasting a century. We've redefined efficiency not as speed, but as alignment, the profound harmony that occurs when you stop running in someone else's lane and start walking beside yourself. The deepest lesson I have gathered from this journey is this: there is no such thing as a universal standard for a human being. In engineering, we use standards because we want every part to be identical. But in the architecture of the spirit, identity is found in the deviation. Your lags, your failures, and your slow starts are not malfunctions. They are the custom specifications of your unique path. The moment you stop using someone else's ruler to measure your worth, the failure disappears, and you are left with something much more valuable: your truth. To apply this to your life starting today, I suggest a simple system recalibration. First, become a conscious gatekeeper of your data input. When you feel that cold, sharp pang of comparison while scrolling, recognize it for what it is: an analytical error based on incomplete data. Remind yourself, I am seeing their showroom, not their factory. Second, celebrate the invisible wins. If you showed quiet courage today, if you were kind to yourself when you felt slow, or if you stayed true to your own values, even when it wasn't flashy, mark that down as a successful operation. These are the structural reinforcements that no one else sees, but they are the only things that will keep you standing when the storms come. Before we say goodbye for now, I want to hear from your perspective. What is one small, invisible win you've achieved recently that you're proud of, even if no one else clapped for it? Please share your thought in the comments. Reading your experiences helps all of us see that we aren't alone in this quiet growth. And if this message resonated with you, I'd be honored if you subscribed to Glaze English. Your support gives us the energy to keep creating these deep dives for you. Until next time, remember, you're not behind. You are exactly where your story needs you to be.